Hello everybody and welcome. This is Christine with Powder Crafts, and today I'm making 4 cards using the Scrapping for Less Flavor of the Month card kit for November 2019. The theme for this month is Vintage Christmas. This first card I'll be using Collection 1. Collection 1 is called Holly Berries, and I will be using sketch number 3. So right now I'm just picking out the pattern papers I want to use and deciding which of the card bases that came with the kit I also want to use. So I am using this solid green. I thought it was really pretty and I thought it would kind of pop against this black cardstock. The cardstock is the black licorice. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim this down so that there's just a small little border of that black cardstock for the card base. Behind it, not really using any specific measurements for this card, just kind of eyeballing and using some little tick marks with a pencil. There are no measurements on the sketch to follow, so I'm just kind of doing what I think looks good. So to start off, I am stamping out the house in the stamp set, which is the Victorian Christmas stamp set by Sunny Studio Stamps. I did use Copic markers to color that, which I did not show in the video to kind of make sure this video didn't go too long. So on the sketch, it kind of shows like a rickrack sort of pattern at the bottom. I don't have any sort of die like that, and nor do I have the patience to actually cut that out. So I just used this little wavy, it's a snow hill border die, and I thought that worked perfect. So adding all of my panels. Now for this one, there is like a label sort of shape there, and again, I didn't want to cut out that because I don't think it would look very good. So I just used a circle die to kind of create a shape to fit there, and I thought it came out really nice. So moving along, using the sentiment from the stamp set, Season's Greetings, adding that with this little banner piece that I die cut. And I did do it all the way to the left because I want room for this button. This button is included as one of the embellishment pieces in Collection 1, and so is this red crochet thread. So I am just adding a little bit of thread to this button, which proved to be a little difficult because on one hand, I injured one of my fingers and then I burnt a finger on my other hand. So it was a little bit of a challenge doing these cards this month. So just tying a little bow with this crochet thread, putting it through the little holes didn't add enough added dimension to this button. So I thought adding this little bow would be a good addition. So just getting it down to the size I want for my button, and then I'm grabbing some glue dots to go ahead and adhere that with. So I'm going to go ahead and put that there. Now before I put this on, I'm going to go ahead and do the inside of my card. This is just a little piece that I cut from that panel on the front. So I'm just adding it to the bottom on the inside mat. I'm going to go ahead and use some Memento London Fog ink. It's a light gray ink to stamp the house, and the 2 little snowflake stamps that come with that same stamp set for Collection 1. So that is going to be the inside of my card. And as soon as I get my adhesive refilled, we'll continue. So now on to the front of this card. I decided that these little light bulbs on the house were super tiny, and I didn't think that coloring them in would really stand out against the blue. So I grabbed the orange, red, and green Nuvo crystal drops, and I'm using the crystal drops for my Christmas lights. Now, if I had to do this again, I would probably still color my house a lighter color because Um, they're kind of dark. They're not as bright as I thought they would be, but they add a lot of fun dimension. So I love the look that it gave. I just wish they popped out against that blue a little bit more. And once I'm done with that, I am going to grab some diamond stickles and add it to the snowiest parts of my roof. Now, I imagined this entire roof being full of snow, and it just kind of piled up there in the very top and along the edge. So this is where I'm adding the diamond stickles. They add a lot of glitter and sparkle when it dries. And then for this button, I'm using the multi-matte medium glue. I used a lot of it, and let me tell you, that button isn't going anywhere. So we're going to move on now to collection 2. Collection 2 is called A Vintage Christmas, and it has this really large stamp by LDRS. It's called Christmas Post, and it's this entire scene. And what I ended up doing is stamping it with some black ink. Originally, I tried coloring it, and for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just I was having a rough day, but my colors kept bleeding, and the coloring just wasn't coming out the way I wanted it to. So what I ended up doing is stamping it several times with black ink because I want to be able to see the lines. And I then come in with some Versamark ink, and I'm going to heat set that with some clear embossing powder. Now, doing that allowed me to color it with some Arteza Real Brush pens. I was really happy with how the coloring came out. The embossing just kind of gives just enough of an edge to prevent a lot of bleeding from occurring. I do have one little spot there that I do end up covering so no one will ever notice it, where the brown from the tree kind of bled into my snowbank. But we're going to cover that up. So I'm using this Merry Christmas pattern paper from the collection, using that basically as my main panel. This piece here I cut first. I just used that for the little strip while following the sketch. Now I'm using sketch 1. I'm not sure if I said that, but I am using sketch 1. Now I really want my scene here to pop, so I'm adding some black cardstock to the back for a little mat where it gives it just enough of a border to stand out from the pattern paper beneath it. So we're going to go ahead and adhere that directly onto my panel. And then we're going to go ahead and put my mat on the inside. This is just some white paper I trimmed down, and then I'm deciding what am I going to use to cover that little area that the color is smeared. So I'm using one of the blackboard labels by Trimcraft, and I added that with the multi-matte medium. These are stickers, so you don't have to, but because of all that embossing I did, it wasn't staying on there, so I did have to use some liquid adhesive for that. Now, I do like to add a little something to the inside, so I'm just using this piece of scrap paper, cut out the part that says Merry Christmas, and I'm going to just add that to the bottom of the inside mat. Now, this card has lots of sparkle. There's lots of stickles. I used red stickles for the berries and some of the diamond stickles for the snowbanks. So moving right along to collection 3, this is called Santa. And this stamp set from Your Next Stamp called Jolly Santa is so adorable. And he's fairly easy to color, and it looks fabulous. So just picking my pattern papers that I want to use, I am choosing to do sketch number 2 for this card and trimming down pattern paper to kind of fit this sketch, which does have the dimensions on there. So if you're interested in the card sketch sheet, you can go over to the Scrapping for Less blog. They have a downloads tab, and you can go ahead and find it there along with all the previous month's card sketches. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp out my little Santa onto some white paper, and I am going to be using some Copic markers to color him. And again, you won't see the coloring on the video because it just takes a lot of time sometimes to color, and I don't want the video to be too long. So you'll see the stamp out, but then when we kind of come back, he'll already be colored. So we're going to move on to assembling my card. So I'm adding that main panel, which is 4 by 5 1/4. And then I'm adding the 2 other little pieces that are on the sketch. I really like how this little red distressed like wood beam kind of separates the 2 patterns a little bit. I did add a black mat to my Santa, which I did trim with a mod rectangle die. And I think he stands out, and I was really happy with how he came out. Adding a piece of ephemera from the collection. It's from Ruby Rocket to the lower left corner there. And I'm going to now work on the inside because I'm not sure what I'm going to do on the outside. I've been trying really hard to not add things like Nouveau drops or stickles or things that might smear to the front of my card before I do the inside. So I just stamped the Santa face in that Memento London Fog ink, stamped the sentiment from the stamp set Believe in Magic, and then come to the outside and add some Wink of Stella. I decided to use some of the enamel dots that came in the collection. They're these really pretty red, and I thought they just finished this card off perfectly. So moving on to collection 4, which is an ornamental Christmas. We are using sketch number 4. And my sneak peek, I used the ornament stamp from this stamp set. So today I'll be just using the Be Merry stamp because I thought it was really pretty, and that's, I wanted to use that. So again, this sketch does not have dimensions, but you know, just do what you think looks good. I'm using this checkered paper for my entire back panel, and then I'm cutting 2 of the pieces of pattern paper where they're shown in the sketch. Now right here I felt like it didn't pop enough, so just putting them on some of black cardstock, give a little bit of a matte, and you'll just see how it just kind of, it gives it that little extra to just really stands out from the pattern paper beneath it. And I think I cut those to be like 1 inch by 3.5 inches. But you could do any that you prefer. You could do 2, you could do 3, you could do 4, whatever makes you happy. The sketches are just there for a guide, just to kind of help you along if you want a little inspiration. So I do not show the completion of this card because at some point I thought I turned the camera off and then turned it back on, but really I'd left it on and then I turned it off. You see pretty much everything except for me putting the Be Merry sentiment on the card, because this is pretty much the card. So I am going to stamp Be Merry, but I decided I really didn't want it to just be in black ink. So I went to my inks. I found a blue, a red, and a green, and we're going to just kind of test out and see what ends up looking best. Now this is one of those parts where I thought I shut the camera off because, I don't know, do you really want to see the method behind the madness? As far as why I chose the color I chose, but hey, here we are. So I kind of like the red, I like the green, but I thought because I had the red and green in the pattern paper, the blue would kind of stand out. So I am now grabbing some, another piece of pattern paper, and I'm going to stamp the Be Merry sentiment several times with that blue ink. And it is from MFT Stamps. I believe it is discontinued, and it is the After Midnight color. I just thought it was a really pretty blue. It stands out. So I'm stamping that several times, but then I'm also going to be stamping it several times with Versamark ink. It's not really Versamark, it's Simon Says version of it. But it's basically Versamark. So I'm going to stamp that several times, and then I'm using a clear embossing powder over that so that my sentiment shines and it just looks pretty, especially because it's, Christmas card. So I do cut that out with a circle die and put that in the middle, and you will see that at the end. Now, here is a bonus card. I absolutely loved this die from Scrapping for Less. It's the Noel ornament die. So pretty. So I grabbed some liquid platinum embossing powder and stamped all over this die cut and then sprinkled it with the liquid platinum embossing powder. Now, when I do things like this, you need definitely more than one layer of embossing powder because you're just going to miss spots, and really the more layers you put on there, the prettier it looks. So here is layer number 2. Now you could stop at layer number 2. I mean, it looks good, but I'm going to go in for a third layer because why not? The other thing that's kind of nice is the more layers you put on, like, I don't know for you, sometimes you get like those little bumpy areas on your embossing, but if you add more layers, the smoother that will look. So being very liberal with my embossing powder, and then we're going to bring my heat gun in again. It's nice and hot, and it's going to just melt this, and it's going to be so pretty. You should see it in person. So I am just finishing up touching up a couple of different places, and that is all set. Now that is really pretty on its own, and it probably could just go on a white card base, but I wanted to just kind of add some other pieces. So I decided to dig into collection 1 because it just had some papers that I just really loved. So I decided to use those papers for this die. So I am kind of just trimming down the pattern paper, and I don't really know where I was going when I was cutting it. I just kind of had an idea of what I wanted and just went with it. In the end, I'm really happy with how it came out, but don't ask me how I got there. So I'm just finishing up putting the pattern paper on there. I am sorry, I am still zoomed in quite a bit here. I could have probably zoomed out a little bit so you could see better, but you can pretty much see almost everything I'm doing. So because I'm using pattern paper, you really can't see the Noel very well. In the banana split level, we get this piece of watercolor paper from Tim Holtz, and we're also getting a distress crayon. I received peeled paint. You might get festive berries, but you'll get one of the two. So I grabbed that watercolor paper, scribbled on this distress crayon, and I'm making like a background for my Noel die. I did use my finger to kind of rub that to make it blend a little bit better, and made sure to add lots of water. And I kind of like the texture that it gives to the look of this ornament. It did take a few minutes for that to dry. So I kind of put that aside and then come back to it. And I'm just fussy cutting that out. It was fairly easy. So when I have that all set, I do grab some of that red crochet hook thread or crochet thread and add that to the top of my ornament, and then grab some of the green fiber vine, and I'm going to add that to the left of my card. This is really fun to play with. And then we'll go ahead and trim the little excess right there. And then I'm just going to pop up my ornament with some foam tape. Now, when I am done with that, I decide to grab some red enamel dots. We're going to add 3 up there in the corner, and we are all set. So here is all 5 of the cards, one from each collection and one card using a lot of the materials you get from the banana split pack. I think the only thing I didn't use was the Noel ornament, or it's not the Noel, I'm sorry, the Christmas bell and saying stamp set. I didn't use that. But thank you so very much for joining me today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more and you're not already, please hit that subscribe button. I will leave links below to the Scrapping for Less shop in case you're interested in this card kit. I will also leave a link to the blog hop, so if you'd like to see what the other designers created with this kit, please hop along and check it out. Don't forget to enter the raffle copter. So anyway, thank you so very much for joining me. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.